The war with the Newts. Is humanity its own worst enemy? The Earth will probably sink and drown, but at least it will be the result of generally acknowledged political and economic ideas. At least it will be accomplished with the help of the science, industry, and public opinion, with the application of all human ingenuity. No cosmic catastrophe, nothing but state, official, economic, and other causes. Nothing can be done to prevent it. Even as the fate of humanity hangs by a thread, with the Newt Dominion blockading every coast on the planet, it's personal interest, nationalism, and greed that keeps us from securing our own salvation. This leads us to the question, are we as humans cursed by our own human nature? Join us today as we head back in time to the 1930s, when an intelligent breed of newts are discovered off the coast of an island in the Pacific by an enterprising sea captain, and are inevitably enslaved and exploited by the business interests in Carol Capek's The War with the Newts. I'm your host, Zach. Now please, sit back and enjoy today's edition of Lit News. A cursory glance at the title might lead one to believe that The War with the Newts is an epic science fiction thriller about a contentious battle between humanity and its newt invader. But this couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, it's only in the final 4 of the novel's 26 chapters that focus on actual war. The rest of the book is a conglomeration of episodes, minutes from shareholders' meetings, scientific publications, and clips from newspapers that document the exploitation and evolution of a new intelligent, serviceable breed of newt. Carol Capek wrote The War with the Newts during a precarious political time in the 1930s. Europe had already endured the First World War. There were workers' revolutions, there was a worldwide financial depression, colonial nations were battling for remaining land and resources, not to mention, Europe was inevitably heading towards a new world war. All of this is important to keep in mind because Capek's bird's-eye view of world events almost feels prophetic of the horrors to come at the hand of fascist regimes. Capek, like many Czechs of the time, was concerned by the nearby National Socialism developments of Germany. In his novel, Germany boasts of its Uber-Newts, who are superior compared to all other newts in the world, and the nation even goes to the trouble in creating its own fictional history that centers around such a claim. But Germany wasn't the only nation or industrial entity to face scrutiny under Capek's satirical pen. He opined on America's lynch mobs who hang newts as scapegoats for other problems they faced that is clearly in reference to racism and hate crimes in the States. In Chapter 12 of Book 1, Carrick introduces the minutes from the Salamander Syndicate, part of the larger Pacific Export Company that serves as a shipping cartel led by G.H. Bondy, a childhood friend of Captain Van Talk, who first discovered the newts. During the meeting, all members discussed the practical applications of the newts, from their labor to the question of whether they could be processed for food or not. At this point, newts are deemed inedible, and their hides have no use. Mind you, the intelligence of the newts is consequently undervalued. However, in humanity's efforts to find more applications for the growing population of newts, a group of scientists does eventually answer the question of the edibility of newts. In one telling passage, a newt working as a researcher had lost his usefulness and, in turn, becomes an experiment for his German colleagues. In this way, we consumed the newt whom we had come to know as Hans. Hans was an educated and intelligent animal with a special talent for scientific work. It had worked in Dr. Hinkle's department as a laboratory assistant and could even be trusted with delicate chemical analyses. We would spend entire evenings talking with Hans, whom enjoyed boundless curiosity. It became unfortunately necessary to dispose of Hans after he became blind after my experiments with trepanation. Hans's meat was dark and with slight flavor of mushrooms, but left no unpleasant effects. There is no doubt that in the event of need arising from war, it would be possible to use newt meat as a cheap substitute for beef. So after such injustices, do the newts fight back against their human overlords? Well, not exactly. In fact, despite their moderate intelligence, the newts are physically unimpressive at best. And when it comes to their own defense, their natural disposition is cowardly, and they're only effective with the right tools. Before they're given underwater guns and weaponry by humans, they were easy prey for the sharks. To me at least, the Newts resemble a proto-human civilization before humanity could defend itself from larger predators. The main difference, of course, being that the Newts are a seafaring species with regenerative features, and humans are land dwellers that have the ingenuity and creativity to construct tools. With all that in mind, the Newts are peaceful by nature and don't seek vengeance against humanity, and only eventually attack in self-defense and self-preservation. In the second chapter of Book 2, The Rise of Civilization, History of the Newts, there's a question posed by the Daily Star. Do Newts have a soul? This is not a question that's answered outright, but there are episodes in the same chapter that convey the emotional capacity of Newts. One such example is when a Czech couple, while vacationing in the Galapagos, meets a Newt on the beach who speaks their language. The Newt is enthralled to meet a couple who speaks Czech, as he had discovered the language in a book and presents his knowledge of the Czech culture and history with excitement and fascination. It's only when the Newts overpopulate the shallow coastlines that they reside within, when they turn their explosives and tools inward, to take Earth from the continents in order to fill the deep parts of the sea. This starts in Louisiana, with huge fissures being drilled miles inward by the Newts. Then the Newts declare their dilemma, how they don't wish to hurt humans, but they must make more coastlines or they will perish from lack of space. In a twisted turn of events, they wish to buy continents from the humans with all the gold they had unearthed in the sea. And even as the coastlines and seafaring nations are hacked away into the ocean, countries refuse to stop trading with the Newts, still selling the Newts explosives and food to serve their own pockets and economies, and not wishing to unarm the Newts that they now depend on for their own coastal defense. Competition between nations like England, France, Japan, and Germany keeps humanity from aiding one another, and one by one, armies and navies are all ground away by the drills and explosives of the Newts. The fictional philosopher Wolf Maynard professes his opinion that humanity is unsalvageable and that Newtdom should be wise not to spare them. People have been separated by borders, cultures, languages, etc., but the Newts all share a common interest. The blog Jabberwock in fact mentions, Wolf Maynard makes the cynical suggestion that heterogeneity is not conducive to happiness. Nations, professions, classes cannot live together permanently without crowding in upon each other, getting in each other's way to the point of suffocation. Either live forever apart, something that would only be possible if the world were big enough, or in opposition, in a struggle for life and death. We have created a fiction of mankind which includes us and the rest, in some sort of imaginary higher unity. It was a magnanimous conceit, and for this supreme idealism, the human race will now pay with its inexorable disintegration. The book concludes with Mr. Pavandra, a retired doorman who was the one to let Captain Van Tok in to speak with his employer, Mr. Bondi. He's your Czech everyman, who simply wishes to do right by his family, and to feel a sense of accomplishment in the world. Early on in the novel, he boasts of his pride, of being the conduit to the Newts and humanity, playing a role in history. However, as the Newts become a threat, that same pride eventually turns to shame and horror, as Ben Dolnick of the New York Times puts it. Carol Kapik explains the original conception of the novel as, "You mustn't think that the evolution that gave rise to our form of life was the only evolutionary process on the planet." On August 27, 1935, Kapik wrote, "Today I completed the last chapter of my utopian novel. The protagonist of this chapter is nationalism. The content is quite simple, the destruction of the world and its people. It is a disgusting chapter, based solely on logic, yet it had to end this way. What destroys us will not be a cosmic catastrophe, but mere reasons of state, economics, prestige, etc."
I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives. You know, and I think that's what I sussed when I was 16 and 12 way down the line, but I expressed it differently all through my life. It's the same thing I'm expressing all the time, but now I can put it into that sentence that I think we're being run by maniacs for maniacal ends, you know. If anybody can put on paper what our government and the American government, etc., and the Russian, Chinese, what they are actually trying to do, you know, and what they think they're doing, I'd be very pleased to know what they think they're doing. I think they're all insane, you know, but I'm liable to be put away as insane for expressing that. You know, that's what's insane about it.
Exploitation for the sake of personal gain is very much a part of the current systems of humanity. So the next time you see that deal on those shoes or upgrade your cell phone every year, imagine what goes into such products to make it all possible. It may be due to the exploitation of whole communities and countries, and in the end, such systems may very well lead to our own undoing. We hope that you enjoyed this edition of Lit Tips. As always, hit that like button if you like what we're doing. Subscribe for more videos on literature from your favorites to the plain obscure. Hit that bell if you want to be notified when videos drop. And leave a comment with your thoughts on this video, along with suggestions for any books or authors you would like us to cover in future episodes. Until next time, keep reading.